Welcome to Ping 24 Updates, where you get the most important news and stories from around the world every day. Subscribe my channel and click the bell icon to stay informed. The air over the second Thomas Shoal crackled with tension, as if the very waves themselves sensed the coming storm. This was no ordinary day in the South China Sea. The sky hung heavy, clouds swirling above a patch of ocean that had become a flashpoint for international conflict. On board the BRP Sierra Madre, a rusting but resolute outpost, Filipino sailors stood watchful and alert. Their eyes scanned the horizon, tracking the slow, deliberate approach of Chinese Coast Guard vessels. Every movement was measured, every breath tense, as the distance between the two sides shrank with each passing minute. Their target was humble but vital, a small wooden resupply boat braving the choppy waters to deliver food, water, and essential supplies to the isolated outpost. For the crew, this mission was a lifeline, a routine act now fraught with danger. Suddenly, sirens shattered the uneasy calm. Without warning, water cannons erupted from the Chinese ships, powerful jets of water slamming into the Filipino boat, drenching the deck and threatening to capsize it. The roar of the cannons echoed across the waves, a deafening display of force. The Filipino crew fought desperately to stay on course, gripping railings as the boat pitched and rolled under the relentless assault. Battered by the waves and the water jets, they refused to yield, their determination shining through the chaos. This was not open warfare but a calculated show of force, a gray zone tactic designed to intimidate and coerce without firing a single shot. The standoff was tense, a high-stakes game of nerves played out on the open sea. Around the world, millions watched live as the David and Goliath struggle unfolded in real time. News broadcasts and viral videos captured the drama, sparking outrage and concern far beyond the Philippines. For Filipinos everywhere, the images were a gut punch, a painful reminder that their countrymen were being attacked in their own waters. Families watched in anguish, their hearts heavy with worry and anger. It was more than just an incident. It was a national insult, the culmination of years of bullying, encroachment, and broken promises. The memory of past confrontations fueled a growing sense of injustice and frustration. Beijing's message was unmistakable: this sea is ours. The Chinese ships broadcast their presence with confidence, asserting dominance over waters claimed by generations of Filipinos. But the Filipino response was one of defiance. The sailors stood firm, their faces set with resolve, the Philippine flag flying high and proud against the stormy sky. The courage of the crew became a rallying cry, crystallizing years of resentment and transforming fear into unity. Their bravery inspired a nation, reminding everyone of the strength found in standing together. Outrage spread like wildfire across the nation and the Filipino diaspora. Protests erupted in the streets of Manila and beyond, while diplomats condemned the attack in urgent press conferences, demanding accountability and respect for Philippine sovereignty. The day the seas caught fire was the day the Philippines decided enough was enough. Appeasement had failed, and the time for passive endurance was over. A new resolve was born with the rising sun. The nation's course was set, charted by the courage of its sailors and the will of its people. The Philippines would no longer be pushed aside. The path forward would be one of resistance, not retreat. Every Filipino, from the highest official to the humblest fisherman, felt the call to defend what was theirs. The world had witnessed the moment the Philippines drew its line in the water, a line that would not be crossed without consequence, a promise that the fight for their seas had only just begun. It began with a promise, a vision that shimmered with hope and ambition. The leaders spoke of a golden age of partnership, a new chapter in regional diplomacy that would reshape the future of both nations. The Duterte administration made a bold pivot to Beijing, turning away from old alliances and seeking fresh investment, support, and friendship from China. China responded enthusiastically, pledging billions of dollars for infrastructure, trade, and investment, an unprecedented wave of financial commitments. The centerpiece of this new era was the Build, Build, Build program, with China stepping in as both financier and builder, promising to transform the Philippine landscape. New railways, bridges, and ports were announced, grand symbols of progress, prosperity, and a future where the Philippines would stand taller on the world stage. Chinese officials spoke glowingly of win-win cooperation, mutual respect, and shared growth, painting a picture of two nations rising together. For a time, the narrative took hold. Many Filipinos saw China as a friend, not a rival, and optimism swept through the streets and airwaves. Economic ties deepened rapidly. China became the Philippines' top trading partner, and Chinese tourists arrived in droves, filling hotels and shopping districts. The deal seemed simple: Set aside the thorny South China Sea dispute, and prosperity would follow. Diplomacy, not confrontation, would lead the way. The rhetoric was all about partnership, not dominance, a benevolent neighbor helping the Philippines rise with promises of respect and equality. Yet beneath the surface, critics and analysts warned that such generosity often comes with hidden strings attached: debts, dependencies, and influence. The allure of rapid development, however, overshadowed these warnings. New infrastructure gleamed, and families marveled at the changes. For a few years, the promise of a golden era held sway, celebrated in grand ceremonies and hopeful speeches. But as time passed, the enchantment began to fade. Unfinished projects and fading banners hinted at deeper issues. The cracks in the partnership soon began to show, both literally and figuratively, raising questions about the true cost of China's grand overture. The initial euphoria over the influx of Chinese investments in the Philippines gradually faded, replaced by a growing sense of unease and skepticism among the public and business community. What once seemed like a golden opportunity for rapid development and modernization soon began to raise red flags. As experts and analysts dug deeper, they uncovered loan terms that were not only opaque but also significantly more expensive, featuring higher interest rates and stricter conditions than those offered by traditional lenders like Japan or the World Bank. The lack of transparency made it difficult for the public to fully understand the long-term implications. Soon, the phrase "debt trap diplomacy" entered the national conversation, sparking heated debates in the media and among policymakers about the true cost of these deals. The cautionary tale of Sri Lanka's Hambantota port loomed large, a stark reminder of what could happen when a country is unable to repay its debts: loss of control, loss of sovereignty, and the handing over of critical infrastructure to foreign powers. This led many Filipinos to question whether the new bridges, railways, and other grand infrastructure projects were truly worth the risk, or if they were simply mortgaging the nation's future for short-term gains. Concerns deepened as it became clear that many Chinese-funded projects bypassed standard transparency measures and public bidding processes. These deals often required the use of Chinese contractors and labor, sidelining local workers and businesses. The much-touted promise of job creation for Filipinos failed to materialize, leaving many unemployed and disillusioned as they watched opportunities slip away. Instead of boosting the local economy, much of the money from these projects cycled back to China, through payments to Chinese suppliers, contractors, and workers, leaving only minimal benefits for the Philippines. Critics argued that each new loan was another link in a growing chain, binding Manila ever closer to Beijing, and increasing the country's vulnerability to foreign influence and pressure. What once appeared to be a golden handshake of partnership now looked more like a golden handcuff, an agreement that restricted rather than empowered. For many Filipino families, the price of progress was simply too high to accept. The dream of development had become a source of anxiety, as the nation grappled with the true cost of its growing debt burden. Years passed, but most Chinese-backed projects remained on paper. The Mindanao Railway, Bicol Express, and key bridges stalled or never broke ground. Excitement turned to frustration as empty sites and faded billboards dotted the landscape. Feasibility studies revealed poor planning. Negotiations stalled over high interest rates. The Philippine system's demand for transparency clashed with China's top-down approach. Meanwhile, Japanese-funded projects like the Metro Manila subway moved forward. The contrast was stark. Japan delivered, China overpromised, and underdelivered. The ghost projects became a national joke and a political embarrassment. The government's gamble on China had failed to pay off. The river of gold was a trickle, and sovereignty had been compromised. The lesson was clear: flashy promises meant little without real results. As economic promises faded, China's aggression at sea intensified. Filipino fishermen, generations on these waters, faced harassment from Chinese vessels. Their small boats were chased, blocked, and their catches confiscated. The Chinese maritime militia swarmed reefs, occupying space and driving Filipinos out. The cabbage strategy, layers of ships, made fishing impossible. Each act was a direct assault on Filipino livelihoods and dignity. The bullying of humble fishermen struck a nerve across the nation. China's actions exposed the reality behind the rhetoric of friendship. The aggression at sea did more to turn Filipino hearts against China than any speech ever could. News of Chinese aggression and failed investments fueled a wave of public outrage. Social media exploded with hashtags like Atenang West PHC, the West Philippine Sea is ours. Viral videos and testimonies galvanized national pride and anger. Trust in China collapsed, Polls showed Filipinos now saw China as the top threat. The government's policy of accommodation became untenable. The 2016 arbitral ruling, once downplayed, became a source of pride and a rallying point. The public demanded a tougher stance and the government was forced to respond. The nation's identity was reaffirmed. Sovereignty was not for sale. The real heroes were ordinary Filipinos, fishermen, workers, and the diaspora. Fishermen like Roberto Bobby Balon documented harassment and became advocates. Their courage put a human face on the fight for maritime rights. Workers, disillusioned by broken promises, joined the call for sovereignty. Protests united labor and maritime issues, linking economic security to territorial integrity. Overseas, Filipinos organized rallies worldwide, amplifying the cause. Their remittances gave them a powerful voice in national affairs. This bottom-up movement created a consensus the government couldn't ignore. The people provided the will and courage for a stronger stand. The Filipino spirit of independence proved unbreakable. As trust in China evaporated, the Philippines turned to old and new allies. The US-Philippines alliance was revitalized, with the Mutual Defense Treaty reaffirmed. Balikatan military exercises expanded, focusing on maritime defense. Japan emerged as a key partner, providing patrol vessels and intelligence. Australia, Canada, the UK, and France increased their Indo-Pacific presence. Manila became a hub in a network of nations defending a rules-based order. China's aggression pushed regional countries closer together. The Philippines moved from isolation to a central role in a broad coalition. The spirit of Balikatan, shoulder to shoulder, now included a wider circle of friends. Together they stood for a free and open Indo-Pacific. In the end, China's loss was rooted in a misunderstanding of the Filipino soul. Beijing believed economic incentives could override national pride, but sovereignty isn't for sale. The Philippines' democratic values and history of resistance created a natural shield. As Chinese investments faltered, the country diversified its partnerships and relied on its people. Remittances from millions of overseas Filipino workers dwarfed Chinese pledges. The Filipino identity, outward-looking, democratic and proud, rejected authoritarianism. The choice was clear: openness, democracy, and the rule of law. The story of how China lost the Philippines is one of unity, pride, and resilience. By standing together, Filipinos ensured their destiny remained their own.